Hey guys, moving into the United States political spectrum. Where do you stand? You should have taken your test already and kind of gotten a better grasp of where you are on the political scale. Very rarely in all of my years have I seen somebody be 100% Republican or 100% Democrat. I've seen kids in the 80%. The majority of us are right around the 60-40 percentile, one way or another, which makes me sad because a lot of times in this country, we designate people to be a staunch conservative or a very left wing liberal. Okay, so uh, the reality of it is that we have both of these parties within us. Very rarely do I see a kid, although there are some kids that are swaying more than 80% one way or another. That you still have 20% of the other side in you. So when we say that we are all Republican or Democrat, um, a lot of times that's not just simply the way it is. And I think the times right now are, I've talked about it in my classes. If you've come into my class, it's sad that we designate stigmas behind being a Democrat or Republican. They're just points of view, and we tend to sway one way or another, or on both sides of the political spectrum a lot of times when it comes to it. So let's take a look at it real quick. Some of the history of the political parties. We have talked about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, or the Democratic Republican Party. Um, it done then in the 1800s, mid 1800s, moves to the Whig Party, Henry Clay, and then Andrew Jackson to the Democratic Party. The Whig Party turns into the Republican Party, which fights against slavery. Okay, Abraham Lincoln and solidifying the Union, the GOP, and the Democratic Party at that time was, in general, the people from the South. It makes sense because remember Thomas Jefferson, he supports the farmers and the debtors and the lower people in the South. Okay, that turns into Andrew Jackson, which turns into Andrew Jackson again, kind of swinging into the late 1800s, and then the President Party. Okay, where we have the Democratic Party and then the Republican Party, and you can kind of see just the numbers here and history of the parties and the presidencies. One thing I want you to take a look at here is um, the Republicans and Democrats since the 1900s. Very rarely do we see, if ever, more than three Republicans in a row. We've never seen more than three. Very rarely do we see more than two. Okay, getting into Franklin Roosevelt. Obviously, Franklin Roosevelt says 32 here that he was a Democrat, but Franklin Roosevelt served four consecutive terms as a Democrat. That was during World War II, and then we passed our amendment to limit presidential 22nd to limit presidential term limits. Okay, and that was really the only time that we see these things, and it's because people kind of get tired of one party and they kind of switch back to the other historically through elections, and you can kind of see that here. So where do you stand? I just want to take a look at, and maybe you didn't understand completely the quiz that you took and some of the questions on it. So let's talk about where you stand. I'm interested to see your thing. So some differences in philosophy. When we're talking about a Republican philosophy, it is many Republican philosophies economically are based on a limited influence of government and a dominant foreign policy. So when we're trying to limit the influence of all government and business, okay, when it comes to issues, single voter issues is what I call them. The far right generally aligns their voting with a lot of pro-religion conservatism, anti-bureaucracy, okay, anti kind of government involvement, pro-military. They're for the military, pro-business, and pro-personal responsibility on things like going out and getting jobs and doing things on your own and kind of taking care of yourself. Okay, don't worry about so much other people. Worry about yourself, and everybody will be fine. Philosophy, conservative, fiscally as well as socially, pro-business and against regulations and bureaucracy. Like we said, Republicans see big government as wasteful. Many politicians call this pig spending, wasteful spending on different things that don't really get anything done. Their approach is Darwinian capitalism, dog eat dog world, survival of the fittest, Darwinism, the book. If you ever guys have been exposed to that in U.S. History 1, you would know what Darwinism is. And U.S. History 2 when you talk about the Scopes monkey trial. and that strong businesses should survive in a free market rather than the government influencing through regulation who wins or loses in business. So they're saying if your business is no good, then it should fail. That's capitalism. If your business is good, then it should succeed, and the market's going to determine that. The government shouldn't step in and help the person that's failing out. On the other hand, we have the Democrats. A Democrat is typically known as a supporter of broader range of social issues and services typically provided by the government. We have welfare programs, different things along those lines. You would provide universal health care is another one. They tend to favor an active role for government and society and believe that such involvement can improve the quality of people's lives and help achieve the larger goals of opportunity and equality. So when you're talking about equality, um, LGBTQ community, Democrats or liberals would be supportive of that. Whereas Republicans tend to favor a limited role for government and society. Democratic philosophy, so as you guys are getting here, anything in the blue is Democrat, anything in the red is Republican. Democrats favor environmental regulations and anti-discrimination laws for employment. For example, Republicans would favor drilling because it would help businesses out. Democrats would go against that because it would affect the environment. Historically, the party has represented farmers, laborers, labor unions, and religious and ethnic minorities. It has opposed unregulated business and finance and favored progressive income tax, where people are going to get, there's going to be more tax brackets. Therefore, the lower class is going to pay less taxes and the upper class is going to pay higher taxes. Um, they have represented the poor or the middle class historically, and the Republicans have favored the higher middle to upper class historically. Giving you both sides here, economic ideas, and it's just some of the things that Democrats compared to Republican support. And I'm just going to read them off here. Minimum wage and progressive taxation, like I just said. Tax brackets, they support taxes on the wealthy to pay for public programs. Democrats favor increase in minimum wage to help workers, and that government can not product jobs, but produce jobs, guys. So the government's going to produce a lot of jobs for people. We saw this under FDR. He was really the first Democrat that came in and started giving people jobs through social programs. Republicans and conservative right believe taxes shouldn't be increased for anyone, including the wealthy, their flat tax rate. Um, they oppose raising the minimum wage because it hurts businesses and businesses produce jobs, and they believe it will create inflation. Social and human ideas, Democrats on the left, based on community and social responsibility. In contrast, Democrats attach greater importance to equality and social and community responsibility. Republicans, conservative right, based on individual rights and justice. Take care of yourself, do good, okay, on that, instead of worrying about the welfare of everybody. Republican philosophy leans towards individual freedoms, rights, and responsibilities, and we've been getting that on the Republican side for some time now. Military issues, Democrats decrease spending, put it more towards social welfare stuff, okay, like welfare, universal health care systems, parks, anything social, education. Decrease spending, now unless we're in time of war, then we have to increase. But besides, if we're not, then decrease spending. Prefers lower increase in military spending and are comparatively more reluctant to use military force against countries like Iran, Syria, and Libya. Supporting gaining worldly support. We call this globalism. Okay, they're more for supporting kind of everybody. All right, not using military force against us, and we saw this in President Trump's. We saw that President Barack Obama created a deal with Iran. Okay, the nuclear deal with Iran, where on the other hand, President Trump, okay, you know. He was more for supporting Israel. We were more for supporting the Middle Eastern countries. Not we were, but President Barack Obama was more for supporting the Middle Eastern countries during his presidency and kind of globalization, where President Trump was more for supporting Israel and kind of going against the Middle Eastern countries. Okay, so we see a difference in role, and it's not necessarily the person. A lot of people get that confused. A lot of any Republican that comes into the office, you see that common trend throughout the time period, and you see the common trend of globalization when a Democrat comes in. Okay, so it's just kind of a lot of times it has to do with the party. Gay marriage, LBGT issues, Democrats support, although some do disagree on this issue, but in general, the majority of them support gay marriage and LBGT support. Democrats tend to favor equal rights for gay and lesbian couples, the right to get married and adopt children. Democrats are also more supportive of rights for transgender people. And like we said, not every Republican or Democrat supports or opposes this. So a lot of people hop from party to party. Could be Republican, but support LBGT issues. Okay, oppose. Many Republicans oppose this issue. Republicans believe that marriage should be defined as between a man and a woman, so they do not support gay marriage nor allowing gay couples to adopt children. Conservatives typically follow Christian right beliefs. Okay, when we look at these things. Abortion. Here's a big single issue party kind of voter line that we see here. Democrats should remain legal. Okay, Roe versus Wade, Supreme Court decision of '94. Democrats support abortion rights and keeping elective abortion legal so women have the right to choose. Now, unless it's past a certain amount of time, if your pregnancy reaches a certain amount of time, then you can't do it. It's kind of the law, and it happened in Roe versus Wade. Republicans and conservative rights should not be legal with some exceptions, okay? And we talked about these things. Some Republicans, if you're very, very far right wing, go as far to oppose the contraception. Things like things protecting against sex and condoms, they'll go against that. Requiring employer-paid health insurance plans to cover contraceptions. And when we talk about contraceptions, that's what we're talking about, okay? Birth control is another one they may go against if you're far right-wing conservative. So anything, hey, individual rights, okay? When we're talking about these things should be illegal to prevent against pregnancy, okay? Because you have your individual right and you should make the right decision when it comes to that. Death penalty. This is interesting, okay? So if we look at the top one in abortion, then we look at death penalty. These don't make sense, right? If you are going to say that children should not be killed, then you would say that the death penalty should be illegal. Or if you say women should have a right, then you should say a right to choose and terminate. Then you should say over here that the death penalty shouldn't be allowed, but it flip-flops all of a sudden, which just kind of confuses me sometimes. Democrats say the death penalty, while support for the death penalty is strong among Democrats, opponents of the death penalty are a substantial fraction of Democratic base. So they believe in the death penalty, liberals, a lot of times. On the other hand, a large majority of Republicans do not support the death penalty. Democrats do not support the death penalty. They support women's choice and abortions, but they do not support the death penalty. So, interesting. Republicans, on the other hand, do not support abortion, but they do support killing and the death penalty. A large majority of Republicans support the death penalty. Opponents of the death penalty form a much higher fraction of the Democratic Party than compared to the GOP. We've talked about taxation, going down to government regulation. We've talked about government regulation. Healthcare. Democrats support anything with the government. Universal healthcare system. We saw Obama, he really pushed for this. Strong support of government involvement in healthcare, including Medicare and Medicaid. And we even mentioned Obamacare. On the other hand, private companies for Republicans can provide healthcare services more efficiently than government-run programs. Oppose Obamacare provisions like one, requirement for individuals to buy health insurance or pay a fine, required coverage of any kind of condoms and birth control, okay, if you're going far right wing. Immigration. Democrats are generally going to support, and we've seen this, okay? Obama supported immigration. Democrats, liberal left, okay, kind of feeling. Immigration, Republicans, conservative right. Generally against amnesty for any undocumented immigrants. If you're not legal, you're not allowed to come into the country, okay? We saw Trump building the border wall, okay? That's a conservative right-wing kind of thing. Gun control. In general, Democrats favor more gun control. Republicans are supporters of the Second Amendment. Although Trump kind of flipped party lines and he made bump stocks illegal and he said that all these different things. So Trump kind of flip-flopped when it came to gun control a little bit, okay, although not taking any guns away, but that. Civil rights, we can kind of see them supporting women's rights, freedom of religion, these things. Republican Party is civil rights as well in a different way, and you guys can take a look at that in your PowerPoint. I'm running out of time here. I'm not going to make you guys go ahead and do this bottom thing, okay? I just want you to watch the PowerPoint for the day, and that's it. If you have any questions, please shoot me a message through Schoology. Great job. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll carry